Legends video. So lately Yasuo has been seeing a lot more love and being played by a lot more people, so I felt like it's a good time to finally release a new Yasuo tips and tricks video. The tips and tricks in this video are going to be slightly more advanced, but of course some of them being more advanced than others. But either way, the point of this video is to hopefully teach you something new about our favorite samurai. So throughout this video I will be going over 4 different things, and here are the 4 things, the first of which being what I call the quick NATO. Next I'll talk about animation cancelling with Yasuo that will probably deceive your opponents, and overall just make you execute your combos faster. Then I'll have probably the easiest of the 4 being what I call the hit confirm, which is more of a fancy thing to do than a hard thing to do. And the final thing I'll talk about is what I'm calling the cheese Q and ultimate, which is probably the hardest thing to do. But let's start off with the very first one, the quick NATO. So a very common way to kind of ensure landing the knock-up on your Q on your opponent to follow up with an ultimate is to simply combine it with your E ability so that you spin. However, using the E onto your opponent, as you can see in this example, can be definitely quite predictable. An opponent with high reaction can flash it before you finish the E and the Q. So the trick I'll be talking about is here to help you prevent this from happening and make it much more unpredictable and much more quicker. So first you have to have flash available to use, and then you want to stack up your Q to the 3rd stack. And the whole point is to not use the E on the opponent, but instead use it on the minion, as you'll see here. And as you're mid dash and still going to the minion, you use the Q and then you use the flash, and it'll instantly use the Q flash as your dash is about to finish on the minion, thus giving your opponent much less time to react. You can see as the dash is finishing on the minion, I use my Q and the flash simultaneously, even though I did input the Q first and then the flash, but it happens almost at the exact same time and it's very quick. So definitely remember to use this to catch your opponents off guard. The next thing we'll be talking about is going to be the animation cancelling, which is one of my personal favorites and I actually use it quite often. So first, the reason behind this. Now the Q when you fire with a tornado seems very obvious, and you can see the animation being played as you saw there, with the way Yasuo throws up his sword. But the same thing applies to Yasuo's wind wall. He also has a very long animation of him actually making the wind wall. And what this does is it gives your opponent a lot of time to see the ability coming because of the long animation, thus giving them more time to react. But a cool thing is the fact that you can combine the W and the Q together to cancel the animation of the Q. And as you saw there, you can see that the Q fired out from Yasuo as he was still in the animation of throwing out the wind wall. So not only does it save you some time, but people simply will not be expecting the Q to come out since you're not showing off the full animation of the Q like you saw at the beginning. But this does not only apply to the 3rd Q, and you could do the exact same thing with just a regular Q as you see in this example right here. And I'm also going to show you guys an actual real example that I used within a game not too long ago that I put up on my channel, which you can check out if you haven't. But this really is a good example of putting this trick into full use by using the regular Q by doing 2 things at one time. Not a very difficult thing to do, but it truly does have a lot of practical use. For tip and trick number 3, we have the hit confirm into the ultimate. Another one of my personal favorites because I really think it looks super stylish. But it is quite self-explanatory. You blindly throw a tornado, and if it hits, you put the ward over and then you use your ultimate. But there's a specific reason why I call it the hit confirm. Because you first have to wait and listen for the sound of your Q hitting, and if you hear it, then you put the ward over, get the vision of them being in the air, and then follow up with your ultimate. So we're gonna take a look at that once again so you guys know exactly what sound I'm talking about. Again, the point of this is to throw the Q when you don't have vision of your enemy. And after you hear that sound of the Q finally hitting the target even through the fog, you put the ward over and then pop your ultimate, and I think it looks pretty cool. And the final trick I'll be talking about, and probably the hardest one out of the 4, is going to be the cheese Q and ultimate. First, big shoutouts to Arc Data for finding this trick out. But the whole purpose of this trick is to only have to use your Q one time after your ultimate to get your 3rd Q ready to go once again. As you just saw in the example, though we have to slow down to really understand what's happening. So first things first, you need to have maximum CDR on your Q being at 1.33 seconds. And as you throw your Q at your target, you're going to see me use my EQ on this minion, and the second I use the Q on the minion, I only then use my ultimate on the target, so in this case Vayne, and as I land from my ultimate, all I need to do is use one more Q as you see there to finally get my 3rd Q ready to go once again, being the knockup. A very difficult trick, but it can get you your 3rd Q much faster in a tight fight. I highly recommend practicing that last one a few times in a custom game before you try it in a real game, but I also recommend trying out every single trick I mentioned if you're a Yasuo player, or if you're thinking of picking up Yasuo and you want to take it to the next level. But those are the 4 tips and tricks I wanted to talk to you guys about in this video. Again, if you did enjoy it, found it useful, informative, or whatever, please definitely throw in a like as it helps